Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Make Shift Happen event for the year 2022. I am Warner Santiago. My gender pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the Senior Director of DEI and Workforce Development here at MassBio. As you may know, Make Shift Happen is a quarterly event focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. During each event, I am joined by different guests to discuss the topics that will advance the broad spectrum of DEI in the life sciences industry and beyond. In this case, the topic at hand will be the importance of clinical trial diversity. Certainly, different people may have different reactions to the same treatment based on their age, gender, weight, race, ethnicity, and other factors. By including people from diverse backgrounds, clinical trials can show if the treatments are safe and work well for people from different communities. Shifting the paradigm will likely require substantial cross-stakeholder commitment and collaboration. And to that end, today we will discuss how improving clinical trial diversity can help improve health equity by increasing patient access to clinical trials, educating them about the potential benefits and risks associated with these studies, and improving the scientific rigor and applicability of research. So with that said, please join me in welcoming our amazing and wonderful panelists. First up, we have Dora Green. Her pronouns are she, her, hers. Dora is the president and founder of Beyond Patient Health Equity. She has an unmatched passion for community building, health justice, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dora has a master's degree in pain management, research, education, and policy from Tufts University School of Medicine, and is a strong purveyor of creating equitable patient experiences. She created Beyond Patient Health Equity with the intent to bring forward equitable healthcare by means of equitable research. Through the deconstruction of systemic and structural barriers, Dora is actively changing the way that we view medicine. Dora was also featured in the MassBio and DEI Black History Month video series. This video series aimed to increase the visibility, presence, leadership, and achievements of Black women across the fields of healthcare, biotechnology, and the life sciences. And we will be actually dropping the link to these video series in the chat so you all can check it out. Our second panelist is Lorena Curi, pronouns she, her, hers. Lorena is the Director of Clinical Trial Diversity Strategy for Bristol Myers Squibb. Born and raised in Mexico, Lorena worked for more than 10 years in commercial roles in the industry before deciding that she wanted to pursue a career with stronger impact for underserved populations around the world. As a Latina, immigrant, and a working mother, Lorena feels she is now connecting her purpose and power. She holds a BA in International Business and a Master's in Strategic Management and Human Capital. Lorena authored our December 2021 DEI blog entitled Balancing the Scale, How Bristol Myers Squibb is Ensuring Clinical Populations Reflect Real-World Patient Populations, where she breaks down ways to make current clinical trial practices more equitable and representative of the people that we serve. So we will be actually also dropping the link to the blog so you can check it out. And I will also like to take this opportunity to remind you all of our next event. On March the 17th, we're going to be having the St. Patrick's Day Mixer at the MassBio Hub. On March 23rd, we're going to have the Policymakers Live, the virtual briefing with Congressman Jacob Plumsh from the U.S. House of Representatives from the 4th Massachusetts Congressional District. And that event is going to be virtual. And also on May the 5th, we're going to have the State of Possible Conference. And it's going to be at the Royal Sonesta, and the registration is also open. So we are also going to be dropping the link to our events page in the chat. And now, without further ado, let's welcome Dora and Lorena. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us and for bringing your passion, your expertise, and your lived experiences to this conversation. And I want to start this conversation by asking you what has influenced your thinking around clinical trial diversity and motivated you to get involved in being an advocate for change. Let's start off with Dora.
Thank you so much, Warner, for this opportunity, and Lorena, to join this conversation with you. Just keeping in mind of those who have different needs in this, listening to this discussion, I just wanted to describe myself. I identify as a cisgender woman. I am African American, so I'm dark skinned. I have locks that are curled, and I'm wearing earrings that are gold with orange tassels, and I'm wearing a blouse that is light green with floral print. And going to your question about clinical trial diversity, the passion behind it is my personal experience with my older sister who had sickle cell disease. Through our participation in a clinical trial, she was able to experience a cure, which is not common within our community. I donated bone marrow to her, and she received a half stem cell transplant along with 2 drugs that were still in clinical trial phase. And that was big for us in our family. And it was only until recently that I was able to share this story in a workshop and learned about a brother and sister who also did this now FDA approved treatment and experienced a cure as well. And so I know that we were able to add to that. We were able to find that breakthrough therapy for us, which is, again, not always common. Mm-hmm. And I realized that there's a lot of barriers that exist. And so thinking of what I'm doing now and the work that we're heavily involved in, we see that there is opportunities to transform that space, allow more people to, whether it's them immediately or generations to come, to experience the changes that come with clinical trial diversity.
That's wonderful. And thanks to those experiences, we have this amazing person with this amazing expertise with us. So I love that. What about you, Lorena?
Thank you, Warner. Thank you for the invitation, and thanks for sharing, Dora, your story. I think it speaks highly of how important your personal, powerful purpose is on this space. Thanks for reminding me as well, identifying myself, middle-aged woman, long hair, wearing a clean white shirt and a square, my most elegant blazer for the day. So the way that I became passionate and interested on this, as Warner was saying, for a number of years, I held multiple commercial roles in both marketing, sales in another pharma company for Latin America and Canada. Heads up, when I was back working in Mexico, that was like the biggest market for me. And then I moved into the region and realized that like Brazil was way bigger. And then we looked into many others that were also like challenging for us. And I was exposed to the impact that not having enough clinical trial diversity has in the way that we can bring innovation to the patients in need. Worth saying, we would file dossiers for multiple health authorities with fabulous drugs, and they would say, great safety, great efficacy, come back with the real data that I want to see and that I want to read. That's why I decided to totally pivot my career, use those transferable skills, build a business case on how this was not only a moral imperative, but also an epidemiologic imperative, and found that the company, that Bristol Myers Squibb was looking into that space, and I connected the passion and the purpose, and that's what I've been doing for the past 3 years.
That is amazing. I love it. And for me, it's very refreshing to see 2 other fellow people of color doing amazing things and to advance equity for traditionally and historically underrepresented populations. So in that same line, Lorena, why now? Why is clinical trial diversity the topic of this conversation?
Because if not now, when, right? I would say that in the case of Bristol Myers, we started looking into it way before the pandemic hit, and that's something that I feel very proud of and privileged. But in full transparency, when the pandemic hit, clinical trials were part of everybody's top of mind, and everyone was being informed on their feed. Like my people back in my home country were all experts around clinical trials, and they will also be speaking about clinical trials, and that added to the evidence and how, like the social unrest was being documented, and we were all exposed to inequities that were happening within the US and across the world. We saw this awakening, not only from the healthcare industry, but from many other stakeholders that influence how we're shaping the world today. In the case of healthcare, it is fantastic, and I am super happy to see all these collaborative efforts. And I would say that just the way that as an ecosystem, we responded to the pandemic and partnered with public-private partnerships and health authorities and accelerated everything. That was fantastic. But that also made us think that we needed to transform this awakening and this momentum into something sustainable, a movement. And I think that's where we are right now. And again, I am super proud to see that there are many others with roles similar to mine or doing work on this space on top of their daily job in so many companies. And I'm looking forward to see a sustainable change.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. Dora, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, Dorena, described it perfectly. When I think of now, I think we are late to the party and we are not fashionably dressed. This is something that, should have happened a long time ago. But again, as opposed to focusing on what we haven't done, I think there's an opportunity to rise to the occasion to really reconcile what we've done, historically and currently still, right? If we're being honest, and help these patient communities or collaborate, I should say, even collaborate with these patient communities that we have failed. In essence, we've failed them, and this is how we really put the patient first.
Totally. And in that same line, Dora, what success or outcomes have you or your organization beyond patient health equity realized from clinical trial diversity initiatives or best practices?
Yeah, so what we've realized through our patient-led or community-led events is bringing the research to them, right? We kind of have this onus like, join us. And where comes with the resources? We have the capacity to bring the access, right? Yeah. And it's not just showing up into the community and saying, hey, we're here, now do our trial. It's showing up, it's connecting with the community members, leaders, it's connecting with the schools because we have to infiltrate education. It is connecting with individuals who have the language needs, right? When we're there and we're providing whether it be educational material or talking about a study, don't just have it in English or don't just have it translated in one language, right? Have it in multiple languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian, Creole, Vietnamese, what have you, the patient population that you're targeting. And then have somebody there who can speak the language to explain it, right? Because somebody might have health literacy issues. So we have to think all those things. And this is about being deliberate in all your work. And so this may not be a one size fits all. It's not a one liner for every company. It is individualized plans that are deliberate, that you're thinking about to your approval for that clinical trial to happen. And also post, creating that continuous conversation with that community so that it's not just one study, but it's multiple that you can engage them in.
Totally. I love it. And you know what? The other day I was actually reading this amazing article and about the importance, right, of having diverse languages involved. And whenever people think about diverse languages, we tend to think about Spanish, English, and or based on geography or nationality, but we tend to forget about Braille. We tend to forget about American Sign Language. We tend to forget about make all of this accessible to these particular populations, right? So and this is something that I always say. When we talk about diversity, there's almost always this instant thought of race and ethnicity and gender, but we tend to forget about our folks with disabilities, right?
Right, our disabled community.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And I think that that's also very important. Lorena, do you have anything to add to this?
I think that absolutely. When we talk about diversity, it comes in so many ways and forms and shapes that we cannot oversee what's happening in each of them. But speaking about what has worked so far, I can say that by no means we are satisfied with our progress. By no means we think that we're done at all. And I know I'm speaking for us and for many other companies in this space, but there are no small interventions here. And I think we need to celebrate each small success, because those small victories are those that will keep your teams engaged and working towards this permanence, right? In our case, what has worked is, to your initial point, I would say that we did put a lot of focus initially on race and ethnicity representation. And that's how we were able to deliver a commitment on our site location, including some processes that would help us to align on this cultural competency for all of our recruitment materials, assuring, like you were saying, that not only the message is appropriate, but also the messenger is appropriate, engaging a lot with community outreach organizations, that diverse advocacy groups, non-medical staff at different sites, and all of those things. And those are simple things that honestly have taken a very long time to get to this point, because the infrastructure of clinical operations is so robust and has been working so well for so many years that changing a little bit of a process is challenging, right? So when you get a team to unlearn a little bit of what they were doing and learn something different, I think that we are in a better place now. But again, we are fully aware that there is so much more for us to do, and we are committed to continue on this endeavor.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. And I think, in that same line, from both your personal and professional perspectives, what are the long-term consequences if we ignore clinical trial diversity, Lorena?
If we continue doing the same and expecting different results, the examples of when we were filing dossiers in Latin America, it was really frustrating. It took us 6 years, right, to get one drug approved in Brazil, and patients were in need, right? So that is the moral and the scientific imperative that we need to address. Safety and efficacy are definitely important for all patients. If we continue ignoring it, we will be missing the opportunity of providing innovation to all of our patients. We're also not delivering in what drives us as an industry, right? That scientific component and epidemiologic imperative. And I think that the past years have really shown us how important it is. And we've all gone again and again through the barriers behind it and the reasons of why we have failed. It's now that time for us to assure that we build this sustainable change and those tangible outcomes. So we moved from where we were some years ago. So that's it.
That's awesome. And Dora, some of the things that I love about you is that you always bring that personal experiences that you've had through this process. So I want to hear from you, like from these experiences that you and your family members have had. What are the long-term consequences if we ignore clinical trials?
Well, I can go through the cycle, talking about, if we have a fake patient who is a high utilizer of the emergency room system, and that high utilizer, because they have a disease that's undiagnosed, because they're not a part of that patient population that is in that clinical trial, right? When we're moving past clinical trial phase, we're looking at a drug that's active and the patient's undiagnosed, for whatever reason, they're not diagnosed in the emergency room. We move from them not being able to work because this is a crippling disease, and this patient is now on some type of social security or disability, now this is impacting us all economically, right? And that's just one perspective. But when I think of this, I often think of the quote from Martin Luther King: "An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So we are all at risk at being in this position. Disease doesn't just hit one particular patient population or one particular therapeutic area. It can happen to anyone at any time in any family. And so when I'm thinking about why it's important, there is a greater, the impact and the way that we are able to experience the advances from clinical trial diversity on the long-term road is greater for the entire community, collectively for everyone. So we have to keep thinking big picture, like, well, what are the impacts that are going to happen from really doing this work? And personally, for me and my family, again, with the story that I shared with you, the two family people who shared with me that they had success with that now approved drug therapy for sickle cell patients, but also my ability to share this with family members who are back home in Uganda, that this is a treatment that's available and it's a cure, right? And so I get excited thinking about that. And I think we're all excited about that, whether you're in the community or healthcare or in the life sciences industry.
Totally. I love it. And I think that that particular perspective that you bring to the table about the fact that in most instances, whenever we're doing clinical trials, we do it with the sense that it's, or for a community that is close to us, that in the case of the United States, compared to most of the world, we're privileged, right? Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily reflect the reality, the international reality, right? So the fact is that, we bring this to the table when considering different, not only populations, but even geographic points around the world, I think it's key, right? And I think that my next question to you, Dora, would be, how ultimately do we involve people from traditionally and historically underrepresented populations in clinical trial diversity initiatives without making them feel tokenized?
This is a phenomenal question. I love this question. And, again, how do we be deliberate in this work?
Right.
So how do we get the patient population, the community, to trust them? That's usually the language. How do we get them to trust us? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We should be thinking, what do we need to do to show up for you? How we can show that we want to support you. And it's not always monetary. It is in multiple different ways, right? It is community partnered research where there's access, right? Lorena touched upon this, that there's unlearning that we have to do, and people get uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. This process is uncomfortable. If we look at historically what America has done in terms of medical and science innovation, how we got to that information is uncomfortable. So we have to be mindful of that. We're creating intentional relationships. That disease state or that mutation, whatever you're studying, does not stop after the study. These have to be long-lasting relationships that continue. What does that look like to support them, that they have the access, that they have the opportunity to continue to care for themselves at this present moment and generations to come? When we're bringing it to them, when we're bringing ourselves to them and recognizing and reconciling our historic, what we have done historically, and then saying, but we want to be better. Inform us. How can we share with you this access? And, you can go into the language that we use in terms of data and how we keep and share that information. I think the community needs to have a greater presence when it comes to research. And with that, that can be a rich understanding and a pathway and a pipeline for future discoveries.
I love it. I love it. Lorena, I want your input on this.
Just like Dora, when I read this question, I realized that it has so many different reasons to be asked, no? And I'm happy that you're being bold about it. Your comment around reconciliation, Dora, totally true, because it has happened not only here in the United States, but in Central America, in Europe, in Japan in the past. And that's why we know that clinical trial diversity and involvement of clinical trial participants in research from design should be a priority, right? If it's going to be something for them, it should be something with them. And I am very happy to see how today there are multiple efforts across the industry and CROs and sponsors on getting this input and faith in the way that clinical trial and research is being made. The other two important things I wanted to add, first of all, is we need to make sure that we're close to the patients and the caregivers before they are in need of being a patient and caregiver, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we will only bring this feeling back to them like, oh, we need you right now, we're going with you right now. No, we need to build those sustainable interactions and be present with those communities in need. Mm-hmm. Always, no? And the other thing, in addition to that timing, is we need to do it collaboratively. This is not something that a company will solve by themselves or an advocacy organization will solve by themselves. If we want to rebuild that credibility and bring that reconciliation, I love that word, to the patient community, let's go together. That's the only way that we will go far. Other ways, we will just have one-hit wonders, and that's not what we're looking for here. So let's do it on time, with sustainability before, during, and after those interventions are needed, and let's do it together.
I love it. And I always say that, it is virtually impossible to do any type of diversity, equity, and inclusion work, including clinical trial diversity, without collaboration. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter your lived experience. You're not going to be intersectional enough to consider all the possibilities around this, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's such a broad spectrum, and this is very important. That constant collaboration, I think, is key. But a follow-up question to you, Lorena, is that, a lot of the companies doing this work in this area, a lot of the organizations are either startups, they're small. What recommendations do you have on how to do this work whenever a company is, have some sort of lack or they lack resources or bandwidth to do it?
The first, it takes a village. So whomever is looking into it needs to be resilient and ask for help, not only from internal folks, but everyone who is in this space. What is a priority is that the more inclusive the workplace is, the more inclusive the marketplace will be. Because if you have a research organization that is already diverse, that incorporates multiple voices, that listens to everybody's thoughts, then you will somehow have that component of representation already in your design. So at Bristol-Myers Squibb, we have a powerfully diverse and broadly inclusive culture, right? And a lot of the work that we do within the clinical trials operations team is partnered with our people and business resource groups, our employee resource groups, because we know that they represent the voices that we're willing to touch upon. So make sure that component of inclusion is already part of the culture that you're bringing into it. And no matter the size of the organization that you're working at, you need to build a business case and speak about the impact that it will bring to the organization. Again, yes, of course, that moral imperative is what drives this effort, and it's part of something much, much bigger everywhere. But that scientific component and everything that's driven by the epidemiology of the diseases that we are researching should be there. Because you when you introduced this panel today, you talked about how because of race, ethnicity, age, weight, background, sexual gender orientation, everything, the journey of the patient may be different. The way the drugs respond may be different. The way that patients are treated by an HCP may be different. We need to be aware of what's happening. And for me, it's a continuum, right? What's happening in an inclusive workplace will be reflective in an inclusive marketplace, and that will somehow impact what's happening on a society basis. The other important part is this inclusion in the workplace can also be reflected with those who are closer to the patient, right? We need to see what's happening on a research side with our principal investigators. The concordance factor is and how comfortable patients feel with someone who looks or speaks or feels like them is something super clear. Use me as an example. I always go with someone who has an accent, right? And we need those physicians who are closer to the patient also to feel comfortable with the industry, so they are more comfortable with patients. So it's this continuum that we think should be part of it.
I love it. And Dora, I would love to bring you forward because you because of this passion, you started Beyond Patient Health Equity virtually from nothing. And though it's technically a small organization, it's incredible how many lives you're reaching and how many conversations are you invited to, and that is for me that's mind blowing. So same question that I asked Lorena: how can an organization, small organization, with limited resources or bandwidth, can start doing this?
Yeah, thank you. And I love Lorena's response. I believe you have to be relentless. It is, resources are always going to be scarce, and you're always going to have to appear in front of some budget review committee to say, we need to fund this, right? And you have the data to support that in the literature as well. However, I think if you're someone who's on listening today, if it's one or two of you, that in there is the starting of your task force. Mm-hmm. Is the starting of the continuous conversation, developing, asking questions, seeing who else is interested, who can support that work, and eventually develop that portfolio that you're going to present to either leadership or gain some ideas about how can we put this to action, knowing where we are in our journey. Again, this didn't happen overnight, right? It happened over a long period of time. And so being patient with ourselves, but also holding ourselves accountable and these conversations, and knowing that it's going to take time, whether you're a small organization, a nonprofit, a community organization, or a major organization. It's going to take time, but it's possible. It's definitely possible.
Totally. And as I always like to say, this is not a sprint marathon. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon, right? And I love that advice. And I think, I actually want to pick up your brain on this, Dora. What advice do you have for those who want to be clinical child diversity advocates and are unsure how to start?
Again, it's putting yourself in those spaces. It's allowing yourself to be uncomfortable. It's sometimes being an ambassador. It's sometimes being an ally. It's a lot of self-recognition in this work. We all have biases. We all have different levels of privilege, and sitting with those in those spaces, educating ourselves, not relying on our counterparts to educate us, but actively looking for that information, actively researching it and reading it, listening to these talks, reaching out and saying, I want to do something different and I need help brainstorming. That in itself, networking. I mean, we're in a virtual world right now. I know that we're kind of moving back into in person, but people are responsive via LinkedIn. Make these connections and to learn about how you can support one another in this type of work. I'm available. I am always loving to talk to different people, to learn about their journey and their process, because it informs me. I don't know it all, and I don't pretend to know it all. I know that there's a lot that I can learn, and in this process where I'm trying to make change, I'm open to helping others, because it's collectively the work that's going to, again, impact all of us collectively.
Right. You know what? I'm a first generation student. My dad didn't have the opportunity to go to college, but he's a very wise man. And he always told me, listen, it's not about knowing everything about everything. It's to have the phone number and the email of that person that knows everything about everything. So
knowing people on your street.
I love it. And I also love that uncomfortability piece, and I want to bring it forward, Dora, because whenever you're doing this work, you're basically going against the status quo, and that ultimately means it's human nature to feel uncomfortable. And I think that's a very important piece about this work that we do. It's okay feeling uncomfortable. It's literally human nature, right? And I always invite people to feel uncomfortable, fail harder, and feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable and feeling harder.
Yep.
Lorena, you transitioned careers to do this, which I love. So I want you to bring that lived experience of yours of how what advice do you have for those who want to do this line of work or want to participate in this, that want to be advocates and are not sure how to start? You literally transitioned your career 180 to do this that you feel truly passionate about. So I truly want to bring your voice forward.
Thank you. First of all, everything that Dora and you said right now is really important. That feeling on not settling down needs to be part of your everyday way of working, because you shouldn't be stopped. You shouldn't stop. My only additions are related to that, are related to creating a business case for the organization on why this is important. There is a plethora of data out there that everybody can look into. In the US, for example, our health authorities are constantly announcing what's happening with our drug snapshots on a yearly basis. Things that you can just go and that are publicly available, just for you to create where you are at this point and where do you want to be. Create that business case and start making decisions on a data-driven basis. And make sure that you connect with everyone within your organization that is running something similar to this, because it will be easier for you to build this business case collectively. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, you're not alone in this space. There are multiple industry collaboratives working on this at a sponsor and CRO level. You will see, I don't know if I can mention them here, I'll be more than happy, but just looking to the work that MRCT has done, the Society for Clinical Research Sites, what's happening with SysScript, with Evolve, what pharma is doing, what Transcelerate is doing, DTTI, everyone is doing this seriously. And the way that the industry has learned to share best practices, to talk about what works, to advise about what doesn't work, and to, again, feel comfortable disclosing all this information is fantastic. And as we said earlier, I think that this is the only way that we will make this progress and that we will make this sustainable. I always joke and say that I hope that at some point roles like mine are no longer needed, right? I always want to work,
Absolutely.
But this we need to create this mindset shift, or like you were saying, like make shift happen, and make sure that we think about clinical trial diversity by design, wherever you are in your organization, instead of as an afterthought. That's what we're trying to put together. So everything that you and Dora said earlier, then build your business case, focus on data, make sure that you integrate all the efforts that are internally happening, and connect with all the other ones outside of the organization that are working in this same space.
I love it. I love it. And this is something that I always say, that piece of our work ideally should be transitional.
Yeah.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion is just the path to ultimately achieve justice, right? And this is what we ultimately want here.
Yes.
So before dropping the last question, I want to invite our attendees to drop their questions in the chat because we're going to open this conversation into a Q&A very soon. But with that said, how does the future look like? How, in an ideal world, right? What are we looking to do with this initiative? And ultimately, from your both personal and professional perspective, what do you want to see, Dora?
So when I'm thinking, and again, Lorena said it perfectly, collaboration. This is not self-serving or self-seeking behavior. It has to be above therapeutic area, above specific product launches. It needs to just be for humans with that thinking, seeing and knowing, understanding that there's opportunities, again, to really excel in our prospective work that we're doing in our individual organizations, whether you be in life sciences, healthcare, or within the community. There's opportunity for success for all of us, so long as we're able to collaborate. And so I see, without getting too in depth, the opportunity for greater relationships within the healthcare industry, but also with being that bridge between the healthcare, life sciences, and the community. Where are the barriers there, and what can we do to break that down and really deconstruct them, as well as looking at hopefully having our work transition, right? When we are going with the approach and the intent of health equity, we're able to achieve health justice. So that's my thinking. Again, I think also we have to be patient. Everyone's on a different part of the journey. It's about being continuous on that journey, even when we're tired, being relentless and deliberate in all the work that we're doing.
Beautiful. Lorena.
I think, like you were saying, not self-service. This is not at all a competitive space. This is fully collaborative. We all share, we all say, we are all accountable on this. Everybody in our organization, with our research partners, with the treating physicians, with the outreach organizations. So it's going together. And you mentioned health justice. I love how it sounds. Hopefully there is a point in which every patient has not only access, but and I don't mean like access to reimbursement, but just can go and get the care that they need to prevail over a serious disease. And that is not depending on any social determinants of health or race or color or sexual gender orientation. That is just there. So that's how I envision it. I know it will take a long time for us to get there, but I do believe in that. I do believe in that figure where health is available to all of us, not depending on where we live or who or how we look. And yes, we're all working together to make that happen.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. I don't know if we have questions yet from our attendees. If there are any, I would like to address them. Okay, so with that said, I think apparently we don't have any questions yet, but ultimately, I think that I would like to close this with any final thoughts that you would like. If you can tell our attendees that if you're able to learn or bring something with you today, one thing, let's say, for example, what would that be? Let's start with Lorena.
So whomever is out there listening right now, no matter what role you have, even if this is in the commercial, finance, organization, R&D, or if you're an outreach group or an advocate for patients or a caregiver, like, you can play a role on making clinical trial diversity a reality. No, it takes a village, but we can get there. One of my favorite quotes, it says that when you change I for we, even illness becomes wellness. Yes. And I think that's one of the spots that we want to get to.
Awesome. Dora. Yes, it's everything.
Yes. That quote we use in my nonprofit for the basis of our work. So we're on the same page.
Great minds.
Yes, think alike.
Yes.
Well, for anyone, again, like Lorena had said, I think where this is such a big space, there's opportunity to get lost in it, to be overwhelmed. I think if we're able to take ourselves a couple of steps back and say, how do we put the patient first? That's it. It goes all back to that. How do you put the patient first? And it will reverberate in every space of an organization, whether it be a nonprofit, healthcare, life sciences, including in the community. How do we put them first? Will inform all your work. And it's not about tackling it all in one organization taking on the whole brunt of it. But again, like we were saying, collaborative work allows us to be successful. If we're able to collaborate on a conference level, right? And to fund an amazing conference for a specific topic, I think we can come together to fund a community. And again, it's not always in the monetary form, but really, how do you put the patient first?
That's amazing. I love it. I think that I would like to close by saying thank you. Thank you for doing this work. Dora, you early in this conversation, you cited Dr. Martin Luther King. I have another one for you.
Okay.
Out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. Thank you so much to both of you for being that stone of hope. It truly means a lot. The work that you're doing is very, very meaningful, and you're out to do amazing things. And I'm extremely lucky to have you here and to bring forward your important voices. So with that said, I want to thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next Make Shit Happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.